I love that the camera is getting Gary Randall just like cutting a rug in studio. Hey, everybody, welcome to the first edition of DadPod. Are we allowed to say on socialunderground.com? Is that what we're saying, Gary?
That's where we're putting it.
I mean, what a website to stand up and brand itself with the DadPod. It's funny. The DadPod may be similar to the DadBod and something that I'm not exactly sure you're going to be either proud of or terrified of, but we are here.
I'm terrified of my DadBod.
Yeah. Mr. Fridley, Michael, he joins us in the Buckeye State of Ohio. And I don't know how much, how many calories are in some bourbon, but Fridley's already hitting it in the Maker's Mark this evening. How are you, Mr. Fridley?
I'm wonderful, and let me just say up front, I am not ashamed of my DadBod. I'll squeeze them together for both of you guys here. Oh, I'm not on camera like you fools.
Yeah, you're not. But Gary and I, we are. I will say this about yourself and I. We have this in common, Mike. We used to be much bigger gentlemen than we are present day. And, for me, a lot of people were like, oh, when you hit 30, that's a time where you feel your own mortality. I fought that off by losing 80 pounds and feeling like I was in the best shape of my life at 30. So my quote-unquote DadBod is a significant improvement from what it was pre-having a child. Do you feel that way at all, Fridley? Do you feel like the new and improved you has staved off maybe some of that mortality that people feel in their mid to late 30s?
I feel a little different. Like, I was extremely fat before marriage and child, and then I got in the best shape of my life, got married, had child, and I've had in-laws in town for the last 2 weeks, and I'm telling you, I don't even want to step on a scale right now because I've been eating out and eating steaks and grilling out and not feeling too good about myself. It's time to pull it back together.
Wow, I thought you were going to say, like, with the in-laws being in-house, that maybe they were cooking for you. Like, maybe you were getting some home cooking.
We were getting a lot of that, and I'm a guy that eats light for breakfast and lunch, and then I usually do whatever I want for dinner. And with people in the house with different eating habits, I've noticed that there's been bacon and eggs and pancakes and stuff in the morning, and I'm eating that. And then lunch, there's usually something good, and then dinner, I just do whatever. So I'm kind of afraid to step on the scale at the moment, but give me a few weeks, and I will have it back under control.
That sounds like glorious hell. Like, oh, man, I can't eat everything that I want to, but it's always available, but I'm going to. It's like no matter what you do, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Gary Randall, you've always been an in-shape dude, right?
Yeah, I was pretty in shape until my wife got pregnant, and then I kind of got pregnant with her.
Sympathy?
It just happened.
It's a thing.
I just got pregnant with her, and it's been, I'm older now, so it's a lot harder to take it off. And, most of the time, it's really the struggle of what we're going to feed our kid. I mean, we don't eat normally, but we make sure the kid eats normally.
Right.
And so that's always a struggle. So I kind of like all my dinners are really like what my kid doesn't eat or what maybe she doesn't eat, or I just, eat like a massive bowl of Raisin Bran or Cocoa Pebbles at like 11:30 p.m. every single day.
Oh man, that's living. Like late night cereal.
That's DadBod living.
Seriously,
that's for sure.
That's my absolute favorite. All right, let's quickly set the table before we get into some content because I'm already the wheels are in motion in my head. I'm TJ. I'm 33 years old. I have a 6-year-old son named Oliver. And I don't want to out everybody's age, but we're a little bit different in the generations. I'll turn it to you, Gary. You're the elder of the show. Do you want to disclose your age to the people?
I am. So I'm 45, and I have a little boy that's going to turn 6 this week. So
oh wow.
And that's now I have a DadBod.
There you go. And Mr. Fridley, you are the only gentleman on the program that has a daughter. I don't know how much you want to reveal, but the floor is yours to leak out all your personal information to the World Wide Web.
I am an open book. My daughter, Sagan Grace, not necessarily named after Carl Sagan, but there's definitely a connection there. She actually turned 3 years old in August, and I will be 39 years old this week, and I am from Columbus, Ohio.
Wow. Almost hitting the big 4-0. And
almost there.
I mean,
it's a little bit of a game changer, 40.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
They said that about 30.
Because it's a cutoff. No, it's nothing like 30.
All right.
It's
Does
better.
your dick still work?
It's better. Oh, yeah, better than ever.
If the dick works, I'm okay.
Only because I don't really get that much practice with it.
Oh, goodness. There's so many things that we can delve into. First thing I actually want to talk about is something we hit on early, is the foundation, I think, of a lot of people in their childhood is the dinner table. And you said, Gary, that you actually don't eat like normal people. I mean, I remember a lot of my dinners growing up as a kid. It was primarily in the living room, me on the floor, eating on the coffee table or a TV tray. Obviously, we all have younger kids now, so maybe it's not like the staple that it needs to be. But I think that may be a lost art a bit these days because so many people are going all over the place, whether it be for work or whether it be getting your kids to extracurricular activities. The dinner table is sort of an off-the-beaten-path destination, I think, for families. And it sounds like if you were to try to get your son and wife at the dinner table to actually have a meal together, Gary, it might be an issue.
You know what? We try it every now and then. You know, my wife will kind of go, well, we have to sit down and we have to eat and we have to be, eat normal. And I'm like, listen, this is not really going to fix the way or the fact that our kid will like only eat pasta and, or rice and miso soup unless he's with a whole bunch of kids. Then he'll like eat what the masses do. But other than that, it's pretty, it's just hit and miss as far as trying to feed him goes. So we try it every now and then. But, I like to think of us as more of a new age couple. We don't really care. It's he eats close to where she's, either on her phone or talking or whatever, but we are kind of like in the same room together. Sure. We're present.
Right.
We don't just leave him alone to fend for himself and eat. We're present in the room so that there's life around the kid.
Right.
That, he doesn't get lonely eating.
But there's a difference between being present and then being present. Like
we're present, but we're not like sitting at the table talking to socializing with each other present.
I mean, I'm around my wife and son a lot, but it's always something. It's always checking an email, responding to a text message. And then I'll admit it too. My phone is always in my hand. So even when I'm not doing something that is work related, I find myself pulling up the stupid app or browsing Amazon for something that I'm curious about or looking at Wikipedia.
But that's because that's your break. That's your time to look at an app that's not work. That's not an email. Like otherwise, why have the app, right?
But you think that's when I should be like focusing on like playing Rescue Bots with Oliver or something like that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. It is. But technology.
But every minute is like that. You got to pick and choose your spots. You can't, if you like, I have to cap 20 minutes of like playtime straight.
Right.
Before I need a 5-minute break.
Right.
I need to look at something different, to either have a conversation or something that doesn't involve a 5-year-old kid,
Sure.
Who, by the way, my kid's name is Mason, also known as Mason XP, and also known as the Masonator.
Wow. He's already like a superhero or villain. One of the two.
I think he's more villain, man.
Oh, man. Well, we're going to break that down here.
No, he's a villain.
We'll break that down in a moment.
Fridley might do something to me when I'm sleeping.
How often are you and the missus and your daughter at the dinner table together?
If there is not an Ohio State football game on or a Dallas Cowboy game and it's dinner time, we are all seated at the dinner table together, completely unplugged. I'm sure our lifestyle is a little bit different than yours because my wife and I both work remotely in the same area. So my wife works upstairs. I work downstairs during the day. I'm an editor for a mixed martial arts site, and I handle my business. I watch the kid during the day. When my wife is done, we all have dinner together. She takes over the kid. I go upstairs. I do the stuff that I need to focus on that I couldn't get done earlier in the day upstairs. And dinner for us is definitely an unplugged session. We don't have our phones out. We don't discuss technology. We don't have the TV on. We literally just eat, discuss, and bribe our daughter with food. And since you brought up a nickname, Gary, I got to tell you, my daughter's nickname is Shishi, which interestingly enough is the Japanese word for piss. And the reason how she got it, the reason how she got it is when she was literally just learning to talk. We would try to get her to say her name, and we would go Sagan, and she would point at herself and go Shishi. And to this day, she still refers to herself as Shishi instead of Sagan. So literally, my daughter is nicknamed Piss in Japanese.
Oh man, how How is she going to react when she finds out what she means?
I don't know, but Melanie and I, my wife is named Melanie, we were at a sushi restaurant with Sagan within the last year. And as we were leaving, my daughter is quite social. And you know what an ET touch is? Like you touch the index finger with someone else?
Oh,
it's almost like a high five or fist tap.
For sure. So if people are looking on camera, boom, they can see it now.
My daughter likes to ET touch people that she's social with, or she meets somebody somewhere. And she was literally giving someone, a complete stranger, as we were walking out of this restaurant, an ET touch. And I turned around and I said, "Come on, Shishi." And the dude, the sushi chef at the table turned around and looked at me, and I saw his knife drop and his mouth open. And immediately he asked the other guy, he's like, I could tell, I don't speak Japanese, obviously, but I could tell he was asking the other guy, did he just call his daughter Shishi?
Oh man, that is hilarious. And I mean, just think about it in English. Did he just call his daughter piss?
Come on, piss. Let's go.
Funny. That's funny. All right. So apparently, Gary, your son is driven by evil forces.
You know, we went to Disneyland. We take him, just mom, dad, and the kid to Disneyland every year, and on his birthday. So we go last year, and he does the Jedi Academy thing. You know, they have this thing where these kids can. There's like this huge waiting list for it, and we didn't even think we were going to get it. We won some kind of crazy lotto to get it in the first show. So he goes in and he's all pumped up, and he's got his Jedi robe on, and you know, they have this kind of like practice lightsaber, and you know, I videotaped the whole thing, and he goes and he battles Darth Vader, but he says to me right before, he says, "Daddy, I don't want to fight Darth Vader. I want to fight with Darth Vader. So can I go on Darth Vader's team when it's my turn and we can defeat all the Jedi?" And I said, no, Mason, don't do that. You know, all the kids are doing the same thing. They're battling Darth Vader, and everyone has their turn. So he does his turn. He comes back and says, "Oh, man, I really wanted to fight with Darth Vader." So right after that, we go to this spot in the park where it's called the something Bay. It's the Star Wars Bay area. And you can meet Darth Vader, you can meet Chewbacca, Boba Fett. So we go there, and it's Darth Vader. And he says, "Oh, I want to meet Darth Vader." Okay. And, you know, here's all the good guys are over here, and he had literally only Darth Vader. So we go there, and Darth Vader says to him, says, you know, "Will you be my apprentice?" And Mason just looks at him and says, "Yes." and Darth Vader just says, "Excellent." And, you know, there was the birth of a beautiful thing.
But hold on a second. So it's important to note, though, that maybe Mason is a deep thinker, because in the end, Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker, he was the one that fulfilled the prophecy, and he restored balance to the universe, because he was the one that threw the Emperor off and basically allowed the Jedi to return. So maybe he's on the side of good, and we just weren't able to visualize that.
Here's where I lose all of our listeners. I don't get any of that because I've never seen any Star Wars movie ever. Met George Lucas's daughter, but haven't watched any of the films. So
used to be a professional fighter.
Yeah. So
true story.
I mean, do you have any? Do you want to?
I mean,
you don't have any intrigue and like, why is this thing so big or crazy? Or
they're movies from the 70s, like the first three,
right? But they hold up.
Well, that's what I hear. But I mean, I'm not a huge science fiction dude. And then if I am, I think
Dune, no Blade Runner, no Alien movies.
I mean, I've seen like some of the Alien movies, like not Alien, but like some Alien movies, like Independence Day.
What's Oliver going to learn to watch when he gets older? What's he going to be into?
This is what's funny is Oliver has a 5-foot-tall stormtrooper in his room because he wanted it from Target one day. I don't think he's ever watched the movies. I think he's seen some of the animated stuff, and then kids just like what kids like. So I grew up pretty poor. We didn't have cable, and we never really rented videos. If we did rent a movie, we ended up never bringing it back. So we didn't ever get to go back.
You were those guys.
Yeah.
You were those guys.
I mean, yeah, we were just waiting it out for the video store to close, which a couple of them did. But yeah, I just love the idea of Darth Vader going, "Come to the dark side," and Mason's like, "I'm already there, bro. Like I've been there,
Yes. Get on my level."
Yeah.
It was so passionate too. He was in the moment. I mean, this is one of the greatest things though about being a dad. Is living through him. And I never got to meet Darth Vader when I was 6 years old or 5 years old, and did something like that. And for him, he's looking at this like 7-foot dude, and he's right out of the helmet. He's talking like Darth Vader. It was pretty awesome sauce to see that. It was pretty cool.
Gary, does Mason have a more privileged upbringing than you did growing up?
Well, yeah, just in the fact that my parents were already divorced by the time I was 6 years old. So totally different. You just can't. This kid's 6 years old with a mom and dad, and his grandma lives at home, and he lives in a house, and you know what I mean? That's just not how I rolled growing up. I grew up from a bachelor guy that was traveling the world and making women's fashion and had a crazy bachelor life, and and he loved his kid, and he took me with him, and it was great.
Yeah, I think we should probably start at our own upbringings to sort of explain our own personal philosophies raising children. So, can you go a little more in depth on what your childhood was like, and what your father's
Well, I was a latchkey kid, man.
Yeah.
I was a latchkey kid. So really from like age 2nd grade on, so maybe 7 years old, something like that on, it was walk home from school, be home, watch TV, get whatever you get into whatever, playing with kids, neighborhood kids outside. And just, dad would be home at 6 o'clock and I'd be there waiting for him. That's what it was. I was raised by my father by himself. So, I was a latchkey kid, but he traveled a lot and he took me with him everywhere he went. And,
right?
It was pretty awesome. I'm sure we'll get into some stories, but yeah, he was an awesome dude.
I think experiences are the most important thing for a kid growing up, and sometimes unorthodox experiences are the most important. Mike Fridley, what was it like in Ohio growing up?
I was born to teenage parents, which is quite in contrast to my wife and I, who we had a child. I was 35 and my wife was 38. So we obviously had a much better financial footing for our daughter. I grew up in several apartments until I was 7 years old. I grew up on the north side of Columbus, Brookhaven, Beechcroft area. Not the best neighborhood in the world. When I was in kindergarten, 1st grade, right around there, my parents moved to the suburbs, bought a house in a town called Reynoldsburg on the east side. Definitely a better neighborhood, still very tough, very working class. And my upbringing is much different than Sagan's. Like Gary, walking home from school, fighting off the older kids, a lot of bullies just from just the environment of what we were in. And thank goodness, I don't think my daughter is ever going to have to deal with that. Like I said earlier, both me and my wife work from home, so there's always going to be somebody to take her to school. There's always going to be somebody to pick her up. Unfortunately for her, I don't think she's going to get a lot of alone time the way that I did. And I'm sure I was a lot like Gary, probably coming home from school and having that lack of supervision. We probably got into things that we shouldn't have. So I'm very thankful that my wife and I are able to provide for my daughter in a way that my parents weren't. And that's not to say that my parents didn't do the best they could. Being teenagers, my parents are still together to this day. I'm not saying I had everything I wanted, but I always had everything I needed. And by the time that I was in junior high school, hard work from my dad had started to pay off, and I was starting to get some of the spoils that some of my other friends that had more lucrative parents were getting. So I think that my work ethic and the work ethic that I will teach my child definitely stems from the way that I was raised, and I'm sure it's not much differently from you, TJ. Tell us your story.
My childhood was weird. I, like you, grew up with very young parents, Mike. My mom was 21. My dad was 23. I was what they call a miracle baby. I was born 2 months premature. All my organs were in my left shoulder and turned 180 degrees. So after a couple days after being born, they had to open up my chest cavity. Talk
about shouldering the load.
Seriously. Take all the organs out, put them into place, and then sew me back up. And I was a fraternal twin, So I had a twin sister that was born stillborn. I was the first grandchild on my mom's side because she was so young, and pretty much the only. There was a wide gap between me and my next cousin on my dad's side. My dad was the baby of the family. His upbringing was pretty crazy because when he was starting kindergarten, his next eldest sibling was starting high school. The next middle school. The next eldest sibling was starting high school, and then the other eldest sibling was starting college. So he was kind of the baby of the family, was let to just run amok, and he pretty much ran the Sons of Anarchy type of lifestyle. My dad was a biker, and I had the same high school teacher as he did, and my high school teacher shared this work experience program worksheet that my dad had filled out when he was 17 years old, and it said, "What do you want to be after high school?" And my dad wrote an A #1 dirtball. His goal was to be just a rebel and a rabble rouser, and that's what he was, which was funny because he was a pain in the ass to everybody until the day he died. That's just what he liked to do. He would be the type of person that was a contrarian just to be a contrarian. Like he rode Harleys, drank beer, and had sleeve tattoos. But if he could get under your skin by saying any of those were terrible, he probably would have, just to get a rise out of you. So while my dad was such a pain in the ass, I was like this saint. Like, people would meet me and think that there was no way that I was Tony's son. And you know, I was a perfect child. I hate to say that. I was a perfect child in elementary school, largely because I think I was afraid that if I got out of line, my dad would just beat the shit out of me. He never laid a finger on me, but he looked like Rob Zombie. So when you have Rob Zombie waiting for you at home, you really don't make any mistakes. And there wasn't a birthday party I had in grade school where kids wouldn't get dropped off, and then at least 4 of the 10 of them that would be invited would leave right away because their parents would meet my parents for the first time. Like, no way in hell am I leaving my kid with you, weirdo. So I grew up with pretty unorthodox looking parents, and I think for the most part pretty unorthodox parents at the same time. Like my mother's had some issues with drugs and alcohol, but for the most part she was pretty on the straight and narrow until my father was diagnosed with hepatitis C, given 5 years to live, and then she had some issues. But my dad was a long haul over the road trucker. So like you, Gary, I spent a lot of time traveling and seeing the world with my dad, but from a very, weird place. It's one thing to maybe get on a jet. It's another thing to get in the back of a sleeper on an 18-wheeler and drive down to Dallas once a month. But they did well for me. But unfortunately, at times, they were still kids. And I don't know if you felt this, Mike, but my parents were still the type of people. They rented farmhouses way off the beaten path, like quarter-mile-long driveways in the middle of rural Minnesota so they could have ragers of 200 people. So sometimes I was around for those parties. Other times I was shipped off to my grandparents. But you never knew when an impromptu party was going to bust out. I mean, I have vivid memories of motorcycles being thrown on fire pits. And it was a blast for me. And where you said, Mike, you always had what you needed and maybe not always what you wanted. For me, it was the opposite. I always had everything I wanted. I had a Nintendo. I had all the toys I wanted. But every once in a while, we'd have to go to the food shelf. And we weren't in control of the food that we would be eating on a regular basis. Now, that sound like, to me, as a 33-year-old man who has a 6-year-old son, that sounds like terrible parents. But at the same time, like, I turned out pretty well, and I'm happy for a lot of those experiences. It's almost better to not have when you're smaller than to, not have when you're older. Because when you're older, I think you want more. When you're younger, you don't really have any wants for anything because you're not even really aware. You can't keep up with the Joneses if you never met the Joneses. And for the most part, I was an only child, no kids around me, no siblings, no cousins really even to hang out with. So I don't know. I loved growing up the way that I did, even though you may call it incredibly unorthodox. And if I tell some stories, I think that the Minnesota Department of Public Services in the 80s are probably going to facepalm because maybe they had rights to take me away from my parents at the time.
So you and I are only children. Gary, do you have brothers or sisters?
I have a gay half brother who I didn't meet until I was 15. He's a complete loser.
Well, why do you gotta like qualify with gay?
He is, because he's not even like LGBTQ cool gay. Like, he's not even like.
So you're not taking him like to go clothes shopping?
No, man. He's like this whiny little gay bitch, and it just sucks.
So you've never
fucked up uncle. It's terrible.
You've never connected?
No, man. I've tried. I tried. He's had like a couple of nervous breakdowns. Dude's just a complete train wreck, man. He's like a. I do my best to not now like get too many updates from him, because he's one of those people where like the more you know, the worse it gets. You know what I mean? The more you know about them, the more you hear about their problems,
right.
The more you hear, and there's just no like, I don't care to be a shoulder to cry on, or I really don't like care much about other people's problems, only because I have my own problems.
Right.
I'll help people in a jam, but there's certain people that they won't. If you won't help no one can help you if you won't help yourself.
Right.
And he's just a loser like that, man. So yeah, that's the story of my brother.
That's a bum out.
No, it's all right. It's okay.
Mike, as an only child, did you ever crave companionship from a sibling that you never had?
I would say probably not. I remember instances where my parents asked if I would like a little brother or a little sister, and I think I was like, yeah, sure, yeah, that'd be great. But it's something I never really I never fantasized about that. I never really had imaginary friends. Growing up when I was real little, living in apartment complexes, there's so many other kids around, and there's so many other parents too. So it's like, you know how you said that your parents would rent like these long stretches where they'd have 200 people there.
Yeah.
My upbringing was kind of similar, but it wasn't like a rented place out in the country. It was like, the common area in an apartment, right out in front of the courtyard, and everybody's out there, grilling out or drinking beer, or playing football or playing basketball, and the kids are playing tag, or we're all fighting or something like that. So I don't think so. I don't think I ever really felt that way. Did you?
I did, and I don't mean to get all tangential and think that I'm a weirdo for thinking this, but like I do think that it's pretty crazy sometimes when you see siblings that are twins like feel an overwhelming sense of pain or panic, and then they find out that their twin was in like a car accident or something like that. I can only say that there are times where I felt loss and sort of not understanding what was wrong, and I never really did understand what was wrong, but sometimes I wonder if that was because I had a twin sibling that died, and I don't know, but I definitely wanted to have someone to go through some of the problems that I went through with my parents, to shoulder that burden. And even today, I think that it would be easier for me to deal with my mother, who's now widowed, if I had a sibling to connect to, but I don't, so it's not really worth thinking about. But there was definitely a time throughout my father's illness where it was like, man, I have no one to turn to besides my friends, or at the time my fiance, who's now my wife. So I think I did long for some sort of connection with a sibling, but I think it may have been happenstance in what I'm dealing with my family growing up, but also the fact that if there was a connection between twins, or if there is something that we can't medically explain, and I don't know how much you believe in that, but I did have a twin sibling that died.
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
Well, I grew up as an only child. I did always kind of want like an older brother, you know, and then I kind of got what I wished for, and you just heard about what I thought about that.
Right.
So sometimes you just got to be careful what you wish for too. You know what I mean? My friends were my family growing up, as far as people to lean on, and my problems and teenage life and all that kind of stuff. My friends were my family, I have people that are like brothers to me today that I think I'll know that'll be around my deathbed, and that's all good.
That's one thing that I think I sort of missed out on too, is we never really lived in a neighborhood because we lived on these remote farms. So it's like I couldn't walk over to like a buddy's house or meet any neighborhood kids. And all my friends' parents, none of them had kids. They were all relatively young. So I spent a lot of time. And this is why I actually think I work in broadcasting and in radio. I spent a lot of time trying to converse with my parents' friends, because if I would say things that would make them laugh or get them to take some sort of interest in me, they would play with me. And I I always felt like as a child when my parents were having parties that I was performing. And that's not really much different than what I do every day for work. So,
since you shared a story about a twin that you shared the womb with that didn't make it, since this show is about parenting, I want to share a quick anecdote that my wife certainly will be encouraging me not to use on Sagan. Apparently, when I was a toddler, it was extremely difficult for my parents to get me to stop eating food off the floor.
Oh man.
You know, so like my daughter drops things on the floor and immediately, you know, you don't teach your child there's a 10-second rule. You immediately come in, you grab the food and you give her something else.
Right.
And apparently I was so hard to drill out of that my mom got fed up at one point and she was just like, Michael, you had an older sister that died because she ate food off the floor.
Wow.
And that changed everything.
I love this woman.
I have not ate a piece of food off the floor since.
I
shit you not.
I might steal this because Oliver, he doesn't necessarily eat food off of the floor. He'll just put anything and everything in his mouth. Like the other day, I come out of the bathroom, I come downstairs, and he's got his big toe in his freaking mouth. Like, first off, flexibility, what's up? Second off, what are you doing? Like, you can't explain why you're doing this. It's just disgusting. He's like, hey, because I did it. That's what he says. Every time I'm like, hey, why did you do that? Because I did it.
And I did it.
Why? Oh, I saw what you did there.
My kid can't keep his hands off his junk, man.
Really?
It's pure, like, it's so next level. It's
I'm
and he gets
39
little
and I can't keep
boners, dude. He gets little boners at 6 years old, and he makes them boners. And I always say, Mason, that's not appropriate. You don't,
He's
you
doing
don't
this
do
right
that.
in front of you?
Dude, he does it like, he'll just do it.
Wow.
And I'm like, hey, buddy, when he's taking a bath or whatever, and
Sure.
Daddy, look at how big it is. And I'm like, look, man,
He
this
does
is not
say, look how big
Oh,
it
he
is.
does.
Come on.
He does. Daddy, look at it in the shadow. Yeah, he's very into it. It's absolutely his best friend. So we're kind of dealing with that a little bit right now.
Wow. I mean, I
They
think
say it's common. A lot of boys, that's what they do.
a lot of men in general. I mean, let's not just say boys. Like
My junk has come through in my time since my wife had a baby. My junk has come through for me.
I think Fridley was saying that his hands are on his junk right now while he's doing this podcast. I don't know, but it happens, right? Like I don't know though. You have a daughter, Mike. I don't think that girls are the same as guys. Guys are always pulling the Al Bundy. I think at least from 6-7 months.
I've never seen her touch it, but she asked her mom what it is, and I think her mom just said it's a J instead of calling it a vagina. It's a J, like Jay, and she literally just walks around the house talking about her body parts. These are my piggies. These are my toes. These are my knees. This is my J. And yeah, but really no contact. I remember when I was a kid and I was Mason's age, I used to sit in the tub and I would literally just put my junk right on a bar of soap and just let it sit there. Do you guys do that? You guys didn't do that?
I don't remember doing that. I mean, I've used soap with my junk, but I don't remember doing it at 6 and doing that.
Dude, I would literally park my junk on the bar of soap like a 68 Buick and just let it sit there.
Did you ever see that? There's an episode of Larry David where any of you guys Larry David fans?
That's the
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean,
you ever seen
I've never watched it.
There's this one episode where they're on like a TV show set, and Larry sees like a producer lady that he knows, and they're talking, and the producer lady has like an 8-year-old daughter that comes up and says, oh, mommy, I'm gonna go to the bathroom right now, and she, oh, okay, sweetheart, and she goes away, and as soon as the daughter goes away, the woman turns to Larry David and she says, she has a rash on her pussy, and Larry's very taken back by just the sheer brashness of the comment. And then it comes up later in the episode, he's talking to someone and that woman comes up and he says, oh, how's your daughter's pussy? And it's just when you talk about that kind of stuff, when you talk about it with a little boy,
right,
it's really it feels like it's kind of like not taboo, but with a girl it's so much more impactful.
Sure.
And everything is so, because little girls are dainty and they're cute and they're you just don't it just seems so taboo.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you haven't watched the Larry David episode, it's I'll find it on the next time we do a podcast. I'll give it a shout out, and it's very worth watching. It's a really funny scene.
You mentioned taboo. Children do not understand social expectations or norms, and I've always thought of just like a funny Saturday Night Live bit of a 20-something-year-old man just acting literally like how 5-year-old kids do, because if a 20-year-old...
He would be constantly picking his nose, man.
Constantly picking your nose, hand down the pants, and asking you the same question over and over and over and over again. And
I don't think I could tolerate seeing a dude act like that for more than 10 seconds.
The cops would be called, and they would put this man in a sane asylum. Like, the way that Oliver asks me questions sometimes, which is completely normal for a kid, it's just like, do you hear yourself? Like, what are you? Why are you asking that again? You asked 5 seconds ago. It's just, I don't know. I think I hear this all the time, and I don't know if it's true because I've never had a daughter, but I hear that boys are a lot harder to begin with raising, but girls are a lot harder in the end. So
right.
I think you and I,
right.
Gary, we might be good. Mike, I think that the worst is yet to come for you.
No, yeah, Mike's going to walk into the room one day. He's going to have his 12-year-old, she's going to be sitting there. And he's going to walk in. He's going to go, "Hey, sweetheart, how was school today?" And she is just going to look at him and say, "I don't like the way you talk to me," and run to her room.
Oh, my God.
And it's going to happen. And it's going to be really funny to see how Mike deals with that.
Yeah, like how would you
react? I
react
can't
to
picture
that?
Fridley dealing with that.
Are you just gonna pick up your Maker's Mark and sit down and start watching television, or are you gonna feel some pain?
Those
with
are
that,
guys.
Fridley?
Let's do a podcast.
Yeah.
No, I'm already subjected to it because my child prefers her mother so much more than me. So, I mean, if it's just me and Sagan, everything is cool. If it's us together, it's fine. But if we're in different areas, Sagan always wants to be with her mom, and I guess I've already just grown accustomed to it. So even the way you phrased that story, TJ had it right. I literally would go and grab a Maker's Mark and sit down and would think nothing of it. And everything the way that Sagan talks right now, she's just now starting to talk in sentences, and everything is need instead of want. And like literally, if she's taking a bath, can you get out of the tub? I don't need to get out of the tub. I need to stay in the tub. I need a granola bar. I need to go to bed. And if you ask her to do something with daddy, I need to stay with mommy. I need to do this. So I'm already accustomed to it. No big deal.
Wow, she's already deciphered the difference between need and want. Because whenever I would talk to my father, I would say like, "Hey, Dad, I want this video game," and he would say, "How does it feel to want?" Well, shitty.
That's because your dad was young.
He was.
So he had fun with you.
Yeah.
That's just him actually being cool, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I had a thing with Mason. So, we don't curse in front of the kid. It's very rare.
How does that work out?
It's very rare
You're
that
good at it?
No, yeah, we're good. But the problem is we say "what the F."
Oh no.
So I'll go, "Oh, what the F," or something like that, or just use it in some context. And the other day, "Hey, Daddy, can I get some gems for this game?" Because kids, by the way, kids don't need toys anymore. If your kid has a phone,
just a screen.
They only need the in-app purchases, and that's way better than filling up my house with Legos, as far as I'm concerned. So he "Dad, can I get these gems?" And I said, "Oh, well, Mason, let's wait till your birthday, and we promise you that we get you some gems on your birthday." "What the F, Dad?"
Oh wow.
And I did not, so there's.
You weren't ready for that.
I wasn't ready for that, man.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for that because he's really not saying a bad word.
How'd you answer?
And I just said, "Listen, Mason, it's actually not appropriate to say what the F to your father or to anybody."
Does he absorb that?
I think so. I mean, he's, generally what my kid fears the most when it's time to discipline him is the fact that it's not the threat of a timeout, because we haven't had to do that in a very, very long time. It's the fact that I will take him into another room and I will sit for as long as it takes and just talk to him. And that just tortures him.
Oh, yeah. Does he like gut his way through it, or does he try to get away?
He guts his way through. Well, when he was a little younger, he tried to get away. But there is no getting away. I shut the door. It's me and you.
Right.
Doesn't matter anything else going on in the world. It's us. And it's going to be us until that attitude changes. Period. I don't care how long it takes. I watched Super Nanny so much before we had a kid that I will wait up to 12 hours if I have to.
What's the longest you've done? Like, what have you gone like a full lockdown?
No, 1 hour. 1 hour is the longest he ever got out of line for. And that was only one time, and he was like 3.
Good for you, though, because as torturous as it is for him,
Yeah. It's doubly for us. No, it's
you're
doubly.
Disrupting your whole day to have a conversation that is largely probably one way.
But it's like sleep training, man. You got to do it. He's got to know that you're going to do it. And once he knows he can't win that, that he just went from having fun to now he's doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I do let him know that, man, you were just having a good time.
Right.
Now you're in here with me.
Right.
And we're just going to talk this out.
Let's get back to that good time as quickly as possible.
And he is smart enough to figure out, okay, this is not, at all what I was experiencing just a little bit ago. So he goes back there. So he's really, it's just the threat of, okay, let's go have a talk.
Just the threat. I mean, you're already his first girlfriend. You're like, honey, we need to talk.
I usually only have to say it once. If there is no saying it twice. If he does something again, I just let's go.
Shut it down.
I don't get into an argument. I don't respond to anything that he says.
And he just goes along with it?
I just grab. Or? Well, if he were to try and resist me, which he did, I guess maybe when he was younger,
right?
I'd pick him up and go in there. If he's some kind of flailing kid, I would bear hug him and bring him in the room until whatever episode or meltdown or whatever it is he was having was over. But he's going to be with me in that room, just me and him.
Fridley, you have anything like this with your daughter?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just full out violent attacks. She's a puncher, a slapper, a biter, a headbutter, a kneer, a kicker. Thank goodness that was more of a terrible two thing. And now she's starting to use her words, more instead of lashing out like that. But she's definitely a physical threat. We took her to her 3-year checkup shortly after her birthday in August. And basically, the doctor gave us a growth chart and showed us that for a 3-year-old female, she is in the 99.99 percentile for height and 99.98 for weight. So she is extremely big for her age. And I've noticed that when we take her to play with other kids, she literally uses her size like leverage, like she's a power forward for the Lakers. And she kind of just like knocks other kids down. So
you get kids like that in school, man. It's like these big kids, that I mean, they're just like running bowling balls and they knock all the kids over. I know exactly what you're talking about, man. And she's a big girl. That can be scary. That can actually be really scary sometimes.
What I think is kind of crazy, and you're kind of bringing it up now, Gary, is we both have boys in kindergarten. The spectrum from small kid to big kid is crazy.
Crazy.
Like,
my kid's not a big kid.
Yeah, Oliver is pretty tall, but he's really lean. And I see him tower over some other kids, but then I see this one kid every day where it's like, this guy's starting for the Rams. I swear. He's got to weigh, he's got to weigh 75 pounds, where Oliver weighs like 45 pounds. And it's just like, dang. And he's not like a tubby kid either. Like, this kid is like built.
He's like already athletic.
It's like, wow, someone get
kids got armpit hair.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure he hit like 320 and had 17 doubles in Little League last year. Like, it's
showing up to kindergarten
crazy.
with 5 o'clock shadow.
Yeah. I don't know. I like the idea of this podcast, and I think that we're going to accomplish some things because today's modern society, I think a lot of parents think that every child is the same, and children couldn't be more different, and parents couldn't be more different. And I think that a lot of it has to come back to the childhood that you experienced growing up and how you take from that and impart that on your own kids. And I like the disparity in ages because I think we all experience different things, but we also grew up in different times. And the time that our children are growing up in together, it's one of the scariest, most awesome, cool, insane, terrifying times that I think this world has ever seen. And I don't know if it's good or bad yet. I think the jury's still out.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, and we'll definitely on the next podcast maybe talk about the world these kids are growing up in, is I do embrace the world my kid is growing up in. And, as cool as I think it is, and as terrifying as I think it is, it's his world. I've already got 45 years on this earth, man. He's got 6. So it's his world moving forward.
Fridley, you think that it's a better time growing up now for children than it was in our time, or do you think that it's more scary these days?
I think it's more scary, and I think it's the consumption of the media. There's so much more out there. There's social media. There's 24-hour news on several different channels. We have TVs in every room of our house. We're plugged in. We've got phones. We've got tablets. Information is there that we as children never could have dreamed of. And that's why I also love the idea of this podcast. In this social media world of 140 characters on Twitter or a paragraph on Facebook, we actually have the opportunity as fathers and husbands to have a conversation about raising a family. And not just the good things, but also the struggles. I mean, we're going to have stories about biting and punching and shitting and pissing.
Oh, man.
And, you know, and getting a good report card. Like, there's going to be good things and bad things, and just the ability to actually have a conversation is something that this generation seems to lack, and that's something that we're going to aim to provide for everybody.
I just hope that this podcast lasts long enough so when Oliver's acting up, I can be like, Ollie, hey, don't make me talk about this on the podcast, okay? You don't want that.
We'll get there.
All right. I'm at TJ DeSantis on Twitter. He's at Mike Fridley on Twitter. You, Gary, or I can't.
You
see
know
it in
what?
my head.
I'll just plug Social Underground.
There you go.
Just go to socialunderground.com. We're a great website. You're going to see this podcast and many more on there as we do more episodes. And you can just Twitter me through my Twitter on Social Underground.
Perfect. Thanks for bringing the DadPod to the Social Underground. Mr. Fridley, appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you. And also just want to throw in there, not my first contribution to Social Underground. I actually did some draft coverage last year. So hopefully more stuff coming to Social Underground for me as well.
Perfect. More DadPod for sure. So keep it locked to Social Underground. And yeah, all that fun stuff. I hope you enjoyed episode number 1. And we'll be back with DadPod again on socialunderground.com. See ya.